Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends, a new survival is upon us and I have my usual showcase video. This one has a couple of interesting twists that make it unique and I think more enjoyable. We'll get to use the Adeptus Custodes in this survival due to the new power-up, and this lets us control up to 7 or 8 characters at once. As usual, a quick shout out to FMG who has been invaluable in putting this together. His referral code is on screen as a thank you. The protagonist character for this event is Trajan Valoris, Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes. The event starts on May 24th and runs for a week until May 30th. You'll start with 2 tokens, and the token refresh rate is 12 hours. Therefore, over the 7 days, you will have 15 tokens as a free-to-play player. You will face the combined forces of the Tyranids and Genestealer cults, and you can bring Ultramarines, Adeptus Sororitas, Astra Militarum, and Adeptus Mechanicus as allies. As mentioned, you will also get to summon maxed versions of the next 2 Custodes characters during the fight, and if you combine that with a well-timed Isabella Resurrection, you can have 8 playable characters on the battlefield at once. Like the Red Gobbo Survival Event over Christmas, the reward character is different to the protagonist character. That is to say, although we play as Trajan, the chest rewards contain Roswitha shards and Adeptus Sororitas upgrades. You'll see me cycling through these rewards now. As with the previous survival events, there are a string of missions to complete that will give Trajan a bonus 140% health at full completion. The main appeal of this survival is the new power-ups. There are 2 of these power-ups available during the event. The first one that you pick up when you beat Wave 5 summons Aesoth, the Vexillus Praetor, and the second one, when you beat Wave 8, summons Kariyan, the Blade Champion. Both characters will be maxed and automatically scaled to max rarity and ability level as you progress through the survival. I'm scrolling through the enemies and power-ups here, but don't worry if you can't catch it all. I'll have a summary slide later on. We have seen all of these units before, but for the sake of newer players, I have provided a brief description of each. Generally speaking, the units on the right are going to ruin your day, but Termagants can also be deceptively powerful in large numbers. The Genestealer cults are notable for their ambush mechanic, which means that after you kill them for the first time, you have to step on the decoy left behind or they'll come back next round. I'll point out that you only need to kill the ambush units once in order to trigger the end of wave rewards or rarity progression. If multiple units with the ambush trait are killed, then the resurrection order is characters first, followed by units in the order in which they were killed. You can use that knowledge to make sure that you deal with most difficult units just once. Another novelty this time around is that characters start to show up during the epic waves, whereas in previous survivals they only started appearing on the higher waves of legendary difficulty. Fittingly, the Genestealer cults herald the arrival of the Tyranid fleet. As you can see on screen, we start getting Genestealer cult characters as early as Wave 8. In case you didn't catch everything as I was scrolling through it, here is a summary slide of all of the enemies and power-ups sorted by level and rarity. Before we move on to the map, the key wave to defeat for this mode is level 11. Defeating the enemies of this wave gives you 3 legendary experience books, and here on screen you can see the stats for the enemies you need to kill. On screen now are the stats for the enemies for level 15, made up of barb gaunts. I know I said that last survival I thought the last wave was unbeatable, and then a lot of people went on to beat it, but this time around it really does seem impossible. The barb gaunts outrange anything you have and they'll one-shot almost everything. This time there are no swarms to fill the map with and protect your characters. This is the map that we play on. Enemies enter from the spawn points marked with the yellow hexagons. These red spawn point icons in the middle represent your starting position for your characters. The top 3 hexes of the starting positions can be shot at by the first wave, so put your tankier units here. Although the height differences are easier to read in this tile set, I have also taken the liberty of marking the map by elevation. The higher the number, the higher the elevation. I've also added red lines here to mark some impassable edges on the map, which illustrates just how much your units can get stuck in the middle and on the low ground. Here on this picture, I've also marked the points where the power-ups tend to appear. The map design is tough for the player. You kind of have to be in the middle to control the map and kill the waves in a timely fashion to upgrade through the rarities. However, that just means the enemies have almost perpetual high ground advantage over you, and I found it quite tough keeping my units alive compared to other survival events. The map does have a small saving grace in the form of the tall grass hexes. These provide you with reduced hits from ranged attacks. The Tyranid Warrior, Barbgaunt, Neophyte Hybrids, and Termagants all have multiple hits on their ranged attack, so hiding in the grass does offer some reasonable protection. Before we get into the characters you can choose, let's talk a little bit about the protagonists. Trajan is tanky and more so once you complete missions to increase his stats. Still, he can only kill one enemy per turn, and the bonus damage from his passive is quite situational. Trajan's active ability allows him to heal himself and become even more resilient for a single turn, but it's not something to write home about. If you use the active adjacent to a spawn point, it can act like a one-time Angrax passive and can help clear a difficult wave, but it is dependent on getting lucky and enemies coming out of that particular spawn point. A lot of Tyranids have the instinctive behavior trait, which makes them literally the worst for Trajan, as they won't move away from him and allow his active to trigger its damage. Aesoth is a great tank that can protect adjacent allies in a similar fashion to the Tyranid Guard. His active does less damage than a normal attack, but it hits 2 adjacent enemies and stuns them, on top of greatly reducing incoming damage. Since you can use it every 3 turns, feel free to spam it whenever you have several weak enemies close to you. Your adjacent allies will do more damage that turn thanks to Trajan's passive. Aesoth works quite well as a defensive anchor without being overly impressive, and you can check out my showcase of him here, linked in the video description below. Kariyan, on the other hand, shines quite brightly in this event, acting like a Karn who is less prone to friendly fire. I'm really high on this character, and I think he might be my favourite non-Tau character in the game. Again, shameless plug to a showcase in the video description. You will not have many turns to build up his active to ridiculous proportions, but Kariyan can clear several enemies per turn with his passive. He is at his best surrounded by weaker enemies, or smashing a big target like the Tyranid Warrior. Remember that if he does his passive attack with an area of effect clear, this also ends up destroying decoys with the right positioning. Now for the main course, the tier list and recommendations for this event. Here is the snapshot overview. I'll leave it on screen for a bit to digest before talking through some of the choices. As you can see, the pool of characters available is pretty shallow. As a reminder, the traits that make a character good in survival are repeatable summons, being able to kill more than one enemy per turn, being very resilient or having self-healing. Particularly important for this survival event are characters that can create summons through their active ability. I cannot stress how hard this survival is if you don't have a great deal of summons on the battlefield. The Resurrect power-up also changes the dynamic of this fight. I found your characters have a higher propensity to die due to being in the middle of the map on the low ground. The Resurrect power-up, of which there are 2 in this event, not only helps to mitigate that, but also lets you bring back characters that are traditionally more defensively fragile. As you can bring them back easily, I found the risk-reward balances out a little bit, especially if that character offers a lot offensively. Back to the tier list. On the greater good category, we have Bellator, Isabella, and Vindicta. Bellator is an all-star as usual. Gravis armor makes him very tanky, and with 6 hits, he carries a damage power-up very well. Flying and high mobility is particularly useful on this map, and he makes the best summons in the entire event. You should aim to get as many waves of Inceptors as possible. Without a damage power-up, Bellator doesn't really do that much damage, but I would still bring him along for the summons that he creates as distractors over the course of the event. Isabella is probably better than ever given the lack of healing power-ups. She can keep several characters healthy, resurrect them if they die, all the while building up active faith. I am much higher on Vindicta than on past survivals. Firstly, because other repeatable area of effect options like Brother Burchard are not available. That area of effect is sorely needed with the amount of enemies you'll face. Remember that her area of effect attack also destroys decoys. Active faith builds up very fast and she will get to 100% crit chance almost every turn, so she'll clear big swathes of enemies every time she attacks. She might die easily, but that is what those resurrection power-ups are for, and you can also bring her back with Isabella if needed. The only character we have in the good tier is Calgar. Calgar is very resilient and helps all of your other characters and summons kill what they need to kill. This time around, you can play with 7 or 8 characters at once, and therefore it's quite easy to take advantage of Calgar's passive bonus. His active is not what it used to be. It now counts as a ranged attack and therefore no longer benefits from the melee hits power up. Still, it can clear weaker enemies of a similar level and, crucially, decoys. Tangira and Actus surprised me. I initially thought they'd be excellent in this survival, but actually the Skitarii tend to die quite easily against enemies of equal rarity. The duo do produce enough summons to distract enemies, but I haven't found them to be as good as Bellator's Inceptors. Yarrick works as a poor man's Bellator, specifically with Tangira to provide dead bodies to get more Cadians. Creed is another summoner, not quite as good as Yarrick, who's not quite as good as Tangira, but you're starting to see the theme here. The only real good summoner in this event is Bellator. Thaddeus Noble is a fragile but strong ranged attacker with range 3 and helps you mitigate some of the terrain restrictions that this map places on you. Morven Vale works decently in a mech shell, where you can repair her and she can clear 2 to 3 enemies per round. Her active can really help in a tough spot, and if you decide to run that, I would recommend running Ro as the 4th mech, as he helps the other mech team clean up while having reasonable mobility. Titus is serviceable since he now resurrects with a lot of health, and he is able to reuse his active as an area of effect attack. Celestine is currently not getting new Gemini when resurrected due to a bug, and that bumps her down to the bad tier, I think. The rest of the list I would try and avoid if possible. That's it for the overview. Thanks as always to my Patreons, and best of luck for the event.